Peace, 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 peace. All right, all right, all right. Yes, Let me get us started for the day. I'm gonna try to do this in an hour and try to come out of it. I'm gonna make a point. I'm not gonna try to make too much details. Well, I'll try to do some details, but I'm not gonna go too far. But I'm gonna start the day with some history, and then we'll go into the component of the topic. So the topic today the question is it truly the position for us to say we are Israelites? Or should we be saying we're Kushites, or Jebusites, or Canaanites? Have we been led by the desire of somebody else to place themselves in a position of our history? And so the stories of our history were manipulated into concepts of religion, and the interest of others have overridden our own desire to investigate the truth. So the question today should we really be saying we're Israelites? Or is there something else? Or is it because of how we've been taught to perceive the concept of Israel and our longing and desire because of the biblical concept that was placed on us, that we haven't come to know the truth? And Bob said half the truth has never been told. So today we're going to try to tell the other part of the story so that it will allow you to make a true effective analyzation of your so-called biblical history and how it affects you and your concepts of how you see today. Now, here I have a wonderful book called the Ethiopian Kushite Empire. And in this book, the Kushite Empire, you will see that Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Kushite Empire, expanded into many lands. And when I say that, I want you to keep that in mind, that the Kushite Empire, yes, these cities are part of it: Axum, Meroe, Thebes, and then look, Carthage. This was all a linked chain going all the way up into the Mediterranean, into India, and so forth. The Phoenicians showed their connections with Ethiopia. So this is understanding when I say Ethiopian Kushite Empire, I'm talking about the Canaanites, the Jebusites, all of these so-called lineages that you have kind of made into the bad lineages, so forth, and those that you think you don't want to be associated with, but maybe you really don't know who these people are, what they are. Maybe your perception of them has all been based on how somebody has made you to see things evil and bad. But the concept was not that it was evil or bad, but to misalign you from your connection. So when we look at this Ethiopian history, the fame of the Ethiopians as a civilized people has forced its way into Greece in the time of Homer, Meroe, the 100-gated Thebes, Jupiter, Ammon. The oracles of Libya and Greece were woven with most ancient Greek myths. The Argonautic expeditions, the Triton Sea, the Garden Hepus were flashes from ancient Ethiopian commerce. Its introduction to Hellas must have been made at the early period shown by the oracles in the sanctuaries of Dandan. Ethiopian commerce was carried on under the protections of sanctuaries. The priest of Amun said that the oracles were founded in Greece from Thebes and Meroe. The Pelasgians adopted the Egyptian names of these deities and passed them on to their later Greeks. So I want you to really have a different look at Ethiopia. Now, I don't want you to think about the state that we call Ethiopia, but I want you to see as I'm speaking today is called the Ethiopian Kushite Empire. Let's go a little further into the book. All right. Let me get to where I was going. Okay. All right. A look at Ethiopia today and her ruined condition makes it difficult for the average observer to receive the deductions of explorers and geologists and ethnologists. The great lapse of time has erased traces of a civilization that was decaying in the days of Cabus. Many of the massive ruins and relics of those declining days are described in books and are conceived by the readers to be product of the lower Nile, when they existed far up in Nubia. The museums of the world contain much of Ethiopian art that is labeled as Egyptian. Ferlini in 1820 found in the tomb of the great queen of Meroe a bronze vessel, the handles of which were ornaments with Dionysus masks, also necklaces, bracelets, rings, and other articles of jewelry. Dionysus was the Bacchus of the Greek, the Osiris of Egypt, and the very famous ruler of the ancient Kushite Empire of Ethiopians. See, these jewels and bronze jars are in the museums at Munich, and Ferlini was greatly surprised at the workmanship which he considered finer than any to which the Greeks had attained. So you got to understand now, a lot of stuff you don't really get is part of the Ethiopian Kushite Empire. You got to get this. In 1863, Merritt described at Jebel Barkal among the monuments 5 columns of the highest importance, proving Ethiopia to have had a very important position among the Egyptian dynasties. In later historical times, these Ethiopian kings resided in Nubia, ruled Egypt. One of these conquerors, Takara, Takara, I can't even say his name, Takar Ka, whatever, carried his expedition into Asia. He was doing no more than Ethiopians of earlier ages had done. European museums contain some of the monuments of Jebel Barkal. Groups of pyramids are near the temple. In 25 structures at Nuri, in the interior vaults is a method of support until recently thought to be Etruscan. Now, the Etruscans are what we call the original Greeks. But who are the Etruscans? It was thought to be an Etruscan invention. At the time of the Old Empire, the population of the Upper Egypt was Nubian. In the 6th dynasty, Nubia was part of the Egyptian kingdom. In the inscriptions of Ethiopia, the ruler is called King of Two Lands. The symbol of the uraeus proves their authority. The uraeus, the serpent on the crown, over Egypt and Ethiopia. The pyramid of the queens of Meroe show authority of this line over 2 lands. Now, when you have the uraeus on your crown, that is a symbol that you are a king priest. This will become very important. But that's what makes you the ruler of the 2 lands. This was why Egyptian monarchs so often married princesses of Ethiopia. It seemed to strengthen their claim to the throne. Late excavations of Harvard University in Old Ethiopia have unearthed at Napata a royal cemetery more more than 2,000 years old. At Nuri, they examined the tombs of 20 kings and 25 queens of Ethiopia from 660 BC to 250 BC. The line of Candace was highly honored in Ethiopia. The jury was very elaborate and purely merotic or mero in style and workmanship. At the feet of the great queen was the gods of the north and south, tying the two lands together. The two lands that in their beginning had been one. The symbolic representation of the union of the north and the south is found at the very early period in Egypt. Her pharaohs bearing the title King of Two Lands. Hoskin infinitely preferred the pyramids of Meroe for the elegance of architectural effects to those of Giza. He viewed the ruins of Meroe as the last architectural efforts of people whose greatness had passed away. These rulers were fully Ethiopian in feature and hair, and their titles was the name Amen-Ra. Some of the largest temples of Nubia were built by this line of kings and queens. The power of Tarakaka and Panki was subjugated. Egypt is attested by the sculpture reliefs of the scenes of their battle in the 22nd dynasty of Egypt. The country having become so intermingled with foreign blood, the main body of the priests of the men who ruled so long at Thebes immigrated into Ethiopia. Favors shown foreigners so displeased the military class that they deserted in a body to Ethiopia. 240,000 soldiers. Pharaohs made overtures to them, but they would not return. These were the former ruling class of Egypt, returning to the land and culture from which they had originated. These become the bowmen who went down into South Africa, the great bowmen who held the line. Some of them were the great smelters and whiners, so they went off into the Zimbabwe and they settled. They left. Why? This is a history most of you don't know. There was a great migration. All right. These were the former ruling class of Egypt returning to the land and culture from which they had originated. The term Nubia was unknown to ancients. Everything south of Egypt was called Ethiopia, the land of the dark race. Though the local traffic is small, a very large caravan trade still passed through Nubia between Central Africa and Egypt. The Nuba tribes, or the Kodofians, seem to constitute the original stock. The Nile Nubis are closely allied to the Nubis or Kodofians, who admittedly of Negro stock and speech, so the Nile Nubis must be regarded as essentially a Negro people. The Nile above Egypt was always hence occupied by this people. Many Nubians are artisans, small dealers, potterers, soldiers in Egypt, where they are noted for their honesty and cheerful and frank temperament. The native tongue is very sonorous and expressive. It is of distinctively Negro characters. These barbarians and the Nubians are labored agriculturists. I said Barbarians, the Berber or Barbarians, and Nubia are labored agriculturalists, faithful, obedient, cleanly, and Keenan insists that nearly all of them understand arithmetic and know how to write. Now, I'm going to go move a little faster because it's one little point I want to make out of this so we could get on to the thing. Prehistoric. And you really want to get this book. And you really want to get this book. Um, the Egyptians had all the characteristics of an African race. Surgery shows that the discoveries of Flinder Petrie and De Morgan prove that prehistoric Egypt was not influenced by an Oriental civilization. The primitive people of Egypt are revealed by archaeology, dressed in skins and used rude stones, implements of the Stone Age men. They lived in mud and reed butts and hutted wild animals. We do not in any such rude beginnings for the race of the Sudan. From these people of Punt came Kushite colonists bearing to the children of Mesmerian knowledge of copper, bronze, cereal, oxen, sheep, goats, brick making. The historic Egyptians rose probably from the union of the Aborigine and the invaders. Saya says that ancient Egyptians had an elegant type of skull with the intermixture of later times. The heads of the Egyptians have widened. The race today has returned to the aboriginal mud hut on the banks of the Nile. So it's a whole lot of history with Ethiopia. A whole lot of history with Ethiopia. And you have to really become thorough in this. So in understanding this history, we're going to go straight to the point. All right. In understanding this history, I'm going to go a little further. We're going to go to the next stage here is, okay, let me get the email pulled up first. Okay, hold on. I thought I had the email already opened. Okay. All right, y'all. We live, so I know I got to move faster. All right. No pausing, no muting. All right. Here we go. Let me go to the next thing. I'll just go straight to it in the thing. I thought I had it already opened. All right, here we go. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to this character here. And the character is Melchizedek. And we're going to talk about Melchizedek to deal with this topic. And remember, we started with the Ethiopian Kushite Empire. And it showed you that the Kushite Empire extended in many directions. It went through India, went to Mesopotamia, went all over into the Pakistan's area, went all up into Egypt, even into the Americas. And we'll make that clear by the time we finish. So here goes the point now. So we're looking at this text, which is the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Qumran text. This is where they found in the 1940s. They found the Qumran text and it was unearthed. And this text was supposed to have belonged to a group of people called the Essenes. This is very important. It's supposed to have belonged to a group of people called the Essenes. So what we're going to do, we're going to look up the Essenes first. Let's look up the Essenes. And here we go. They call the Essenes, they say they were a mystic sect. Supposed to be a mystic Jewish sect during the Second Temple period that flourished in the 2nd century BC to the 1st century, the Essenes. They also placed this name with them, sons of Zadok. All right, what did the Essenes believe in? They say, like the Pharisees, the Essenes meticulously observed the laws of Moses, the Sabbath, rituals of purity. They also professed the belief in immortality and divine punishment for sin. But unlike the Pharisees, the Essenes denied the resurrection of the body and refused to immerse themselves in public life. So they lived in an aesthetic kind of life. They have rumors where they try to say that that John the Baptist was supposed to be an Essene. We'll get to that point. I know character names is very funny with people. So then we go from this. We go from the Essenes to another name that's tied in with the Essenes. Here we go. Boom. Now, when you look at the Essenes, you'll find out that there's a book called the Hiram Key. Robert, I want to directly give you that. It's a very good book. Let me see, Robert. So it's Robert Loomis and Christopher Knight. It's the Hiram Key. Let's see if one of them popped up. Oh, okay, one did pop up. Very important, very good book. Let's see if it can open up. So give us a site. Oh no, it's not gonna do it right there. Let's see. Nope. Okay, I'm gonna let that go. Let me see. This might be one here. It's a very good book here. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, you have to get this book, and this will be one of the books you'll find a lot of information. It's called the Hiram Key. Very important. Those who know the term Hiram, you know why that will become very important later on. Hold on. So where we was at? All right. So we here where we see that the Essenes are associated also with the Nazarenes. Essenes, Hasmonean, and Nazarenes. All of them have a certain relation together. What you'll find is a lot of people see that the Essenes think that the Essenes were the Nazarenes. They were considered the early Christians. If you look in the Bible, the book of Acts, it tells you that in the city of Antioch is the first place that they called the people Christians. But if you ask them what were the people before they were Christians, they called them Nazarenes. The thing about the Nazarenes and the Essenes is all of them, and this is in the Dead Sea Scrolls right here. Let me swell this up a little bit. All of them had an attachment to what is called the teacher of righteousness. The teacher of righteousness, right? So you get this teacher of righteousness through the Essenes and the Nazarenes. All right, so let's go a little further. The Essenes have something that's called the Manual of Discipline. I mean, they found, the Dead Sea Scrolls, Qumran. Qumran means the doorway, keepers of the door. Was so they would say the Essenes, community of Jews who settled at Qumran in Judea, deserted in the early 2nd century. They did so to remove themselves from what they considered a corrupt religion symbolized by religious political high priest of the Hasmonean dynasty. Now, we're going to get two interpretations here because I want you to know that there's two Hasmonean dynasties here, or not really two Hasmonean dynasties. There's a corruption, but then you'll find out that the Hasmonean dynasty were those that were in the cave fighting a revolutionary fight. But there were false priests who took the position under this, and we're going to get to this. We're going to get deeper into this. This is the history that you got to dig into. So you get this Qumran, you get the Essenes, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and you find out this name Hasmonean comes into this process. Well, when we get into all of this, we also see that oh, they didn't put him in here. Let me see where it goes. Okay, Essene said fellow members, communities, scenes. All right, here we go. So the Essenes, following the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the vicinity of Qumran, most scholars had agreed that the Qumran communities was Essenes, right? So this Essene sect was considered the Qumran community. But what happens now? Let's go back to the Qumran. All right, let's go back to this Qumran. So what happens is in the Qumran is it's very important that when you read in the Dead Seas over the Qumran is, and let's just go a little further, that all of they dealt with what are the writings about Melchizedek doing at Qumran. So the Qumran sect were writings on Melchizedek. Get this right now. Melchizedek. Melchizedek. Not Jesus, but Melchizedek. Here Melchizedek appears by name. The narrative follows the Genesis. So you got this Genesis story, and it say Melchizedek, he came to Salem, that is Jerusalem, while Abraham was camped in Chavez, the Valley of Kings. Betharis, Melchizedek, the kings of Salem brought out food and drink and bread and Abraham for all the men. You go through the story. Now, when you get to reading this, and I go over this all the time, I want you to understand when this document is found, I need you to understand the mindsets of our scholars and all of those. Don't act like everybody knew everything. They didn't. So a brief analysis of the few changes, because they're reading the Qumran, comparing it to the Bible, and they're looking at the changes that prove an instructive version that smooths out Genesis' account by having the king of Sodom come to Salem, therefore making Melchizedek's appearance natural. See, they didn't think of Melchizedek as a natural person, but he was a natural person. And I want you to understand this is important because the topic is, are we Israelites, or are we something different? Is Israelite concept something that has been embedded in us through a conspiracy to throw us away from our history when there is things that are far greater? Okay, so let's get an understanding of this. Let's get a real good understanding of this, because some of the statements that you read, you won't understand till you know this. You've read it, you've heard it, but you still don't really see it yet. So Melchizedek appearance as a natural person. See, so listen what it says now, because as it is in the King James version, Melchizedek drops in from nowhere and disappears, never to be heard of. So to them, Melchizedek was like a spirit or an angel that just popped in out of thin air and he was gone again. It wasn't supposed to be a natural person. It wasn't supposed to be somebody that really was here to eat and have food and drink and produce children and all of these things here. Not Melchizedek. So this is your scholars, your biblical, your Jewish scholars, your archaeologists, all of them until 1940s had no concept of seeing Melchizedek as a natural person. So this is a component that you have to understand. Now I want you to consider Kushite Ethiopian Empire. So going a little further, when comparing the text to Genesis, one wonders what the scribes was copying as he sat in the Qumran scriptorium. So they're looking at it now and saying it looked like the guy just took a synopsis out of their books and wrote this as Genesis. Did he have before him one ancient text, or was he collating several accounts? Was the person trying to make a synopsis of several things, trying to simplify it just to keep a record. After reading Genesis, Apocryphum, turning to Genesis is like reading a digest. The idea seems as convincing as the Apocryphum is full of embellishments. Some additions are possibly editorial additions, like the Salem-Jerusalem attachment, but much of the rest falls coherently into place. If there were much editing involved, it would be expected that sacrificial elements in Melchizedek's bread and wine would have been noted, since the scribe belongs to a group who championed the Zadok priesthood, could have seen Melchizedek as a chief of the line. The scribe rather wrote food and drink. He rather wrote that Melchizedek is brought food and drink. So it confuses them here. Why did Melchizedek, ain't the bread and wine important? Why would they just, what was, so Melchizedek came out, had a meeting with them and brought food and drink? The additions of the names of the previous owners of the booty which he had paid the tithe seems to finish the sentence of Genesis. And gave him a tenth of all the flocks of the king of Elam and his confederate. The Genesis Apocryphum is difficult to classify as a pure legend. It would not be better to examine it in the light of a possible prior text. So now they're saying, okay, so this Qumran thing, it got to be a prior text to the book of Genesis. The Melchizedek scroll from the Qumran cave, hereafter referred to as 11Q Melch, presents some of the same problems as the Genesis Apocryphum. However, the time we are dealing with, a midrash, is the scroll autographed original. How much material did the writer have about Melchizedek besides Old Testament texts he chose to use in his midrash? The prior question might well be asked is, why did he choose Melchizedek as the subject of his exegesis, or exegesis, whatever? Did he see in Melchizedek the first priest of an order to which he now laid claim in the Zadok priesthood? Was he simply applying his apocalyptic view? Did he have earlier records relating to Melchizedek from which could draw different conclusions? Here, reference to the brass plates mentioned in the Book of Mormon, because the Book of the Mormon supplies more on Melchizedek. So the Mormons are following Melchizedek too. The Qumran scribe's idea pulls away the Jewish notion. He sees a heavenly Melchizedek who will execute judgment in the future, Jubilee. He is seen in the company with heavenly counselors, with a heavenly council, and is a leader. He will exact vengeance of judgment of El from the land of Baalam, Satan. He is heralded upon the mountain proclaiming peace. James A. Sanders points out that this same cluster of scriptures is related in the Epistle of Hebrews to Christ, but that this 11Q Melch fragment is earliest known instance of their being interwoven in this manner. The heavenly Son of God of Hebrews 7, who rules above all of the heavenly earthly powers and lives forever and to make intercession for those who put their trust in him, has his counterpart now in the heavenly Melchizedek. So who is this Melchizedek? According to this text, Melchizedek acts under the directions of El, who judges the people. A significant passage in the text finds El, the highest God, in the midst of the Elohim gods. In his council, another Elohim, who is Melchizedek, the text reads as it is written concerning him in the hymns of David, who says, Elohim, Melchizedek, or the Holy One, standeth in the assembly of El, God, among the Elohims, the holy ones, the court of the heavenly beings, he judges. So the Nag Hammadi library that was discovered in Egypt now provides all of these books that now they place Melchizedek in a position. Let me go down here so you can see. They place Melchizedek in a position to where he is the Son of God. He is the representative of the Most High. his priesthood. So this takes it a whole different element on this Melchizedek. So let's go a little further on this Melchizedek. Let's go a little further. Let's go right here first. Let me do this. Let's go a little further. Let's get this on in there. Let's go a little further on this Melchizedek. All right. Now, this is a brief note on the origins of the Amara and the Oromo, but it comes out of a book that's called the Dejan Shoah, or out of the Dejan Shua. This is an ancient Ethiopian manuscript that was written in Ge'ez, discovered by Mary Ras Aman Bele in the ruins of the Ethiopian church in Nubia. Very important. I want you to get that. In Nubia, a part of the Ethiopian Empire, not Ethiopia state. The Ethiopian Empire, Kushite Empire. Thinking about the Kushite Empire, it expanded several lands. So I want you to keep your mind right there. Don't come back to this modern time trying to make it a state. Stay in the empire, ancient times. So when we look at this text and we look at it, it's giving you a brief history out of the manuscript, out of the scrolls. And in the manuscripts, you find out that the Amara and the Oromo are descendants of one man or a father, Melchizedek. What? A natural person, Melchizedek? Yes. This is a part of your history that has been erased for a reason. So Melchizedek, king of Salem, the high priest of God on earth. Now you got to think, in Abraham's time, this is before Moses. So the children of Israel don't have a religion. They don't have Israel. They ain't on that time yet. They trying to find their way. They trying to figure out where to go. And Abraham meets Melchizedek. This is very important. Abraham meets Melchizedek. Melchizedek is already a king and a priest. So everything that you claim about Abraham before Abraham is nothing now. But at this time, the true order, or the true person who represents God, is Melchizedek. So are we supposed to be following the lineage of Abraham, or is it the lineage of Melchizedek? Is it the lineage of Abraham, or is it the lineage of Melchizedek? So let me get you on. I'm going to move it faster because I don't want this video to be too long. I can't post it certain places. So Melchizedek blesses Abraham, because Abraham is with the group. Now, they're coming from a certain area, but they're considered part of our people. Got to understand the history, because our people spread out through different lands. And there's been great wars, and there have been other things going on throughout the planet. So Abraham became a confederate, a comrade, when it was a certain time period. Abraham helped certain people fight a war. And because of that, he got treaty and a covenant with a group of people. And the treaty and the covenant that he got with the group of people was the Kushite Ethiopian Empire. Melchizedek. But Melchizedek says that blessed Abraham's lineage, we're going to keep a treaty with them Because guess what? This lineage is going to come back around. I have a vision that through this lineage, we're going to come back to our position in the world. And you're going to understand this at the end. So let's go a little further. So about 2,000 years, even before your so-called concept of Jesus, God ordered Melchizedek to send his son Ethel. So Melchizedek has a child, a son, Ethel, whose name is Ethiop. Later on, by God, he goes to settle in what's called, later on would be called Ethiopia, but it was by Lake Tana. And because Ethiop stayed near Lake Tana, they started calling the area Ethiopia. And then they called the people Ethiopians because they were descendants from this Melchizedek lineage. So Ethel, meaning gift of God to Ethiopia. So when God, they put this is the writer now, this is a Christian, so he's putting it, but he's giving you the history, is born as a human being 2,000 years later, the descendants of Ethel would bring him to Bethlehem, Ethiopia, gifts such as yellow gold, myrrh, and incense. So these are all Ethiopian items. The yellow gold, the myrrh, and the frankincense are all Ethiopian items. And here it is, they say the Ethiopians will be led by a star which appears in Ethiopia to lead them to Bethlehem. According to Ethel, Ethel went to Ethiopia and settled in what is today known as Gojam. All right, so God changed his name from Ethel to Ethiop. And then Ethiop was the gift of yellow gold. So you're going to understand this. And I remember some of you brothers, if you Anunnaki, you know the gods came to earth searching for gold. So I'm going to give you that heads up in your mythology. So Ethiop later on became 12 kings. His children became 12 kings, and then the Ethiopian Empire. So these 12 children spread out, becoming more and more, and they become the Ethiopian Empire. So some of these children would be in Edom, some of these children would be in Palestine, some of them would be in Iraq, some of them would have went to India, some of them would have been up in the Asia area, but this was part of the Ethiopian Empire. So these children were spread out, children of Melchizedek, king priestly, following the kingly priestly order. So everywhere you hear me saying, you're going to find that there was a kingly priestly order. Do your research. They headed for Bethlehem with the gifts. Now, okay, we're going a little further. So I'm going to get it a little up because we're going to go up. We're going to go up, 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 up. So now we got that Ethiop begot 13 children, 10 boys, 3 girls. So you see a blood lineage being created. And out of the 10 boys, Ethiop, we're going to take one lineage. See, it says, I will take only one line of them. So we're only dealing with one line. And this was the line of Beor. So the line of Beor takes you to a character named Baalam. Keep telling you, got to catch this. Takes you to a character named Baalam. This is where the Christians, the Hebrews, and all of them get a prophecy of a Messiah. They didn't have one before. Remember? All right, so Baalam is important because Baalam is a descendant of Melchizedek. So this lineage from Melchizedek, these children, and they're here for a certain time period. So we're going to go to something else. Let's go a little further. Let's go a little further. I don't know if this is all of them. Did I get all of them?